Awesome. G'day, g'day. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another of our Friday spotlights on an amazing leader doing great things in the field of leadership, doing good things for good humans, and creating companies and cultures where people love to come to work. And I always say, kind of happy Mondays, where they're happy to come to work on a Monday. And it's always my delight to bring new people to share with you their insights. And today is going to be an amazing guest. We've had a couple of chats now, and I'm really excited to bring our guest to you today. I also have to say to anyone who's live on the call, and if you're watching later, sorry, but this applies to you too. Happy Valentine's Day, whether you celebrate that or not. And I actually got a text message from a girlfriend as well this morning that said, Happy Galentine's Day for your girlfriends. So that's lovely too. So happy Valentine's to everyone. But who I'd love to introduce you to now is this amazing gentleman named Ryan Griffin. And Ryan is the MD, Managing Director of an amazing creative agency, whom are suppliers to me. And I've been working with Chunky Duck, I think, I don't know, it's like maybe 7 or 8 years now, even longer. And I've referred all sorts of people to them because they do good work. And so welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. And yeah, happy Valentine's Day to everyone listening.
Yeah. And so I didn't kind of go into a formal bio-y thing then, Ryan, because I like to kind of let our guest introduce themselves, because I find it has less of the, it sounds like it's being written off a piece of paper or read off that. I know you're the managing director here now, but you've had lots of varied things in your career as well. So why don't you begin at the beginning and give us a little brief, who are you, so we get to know you?
Yeah, thank you very much. It certainly is difficult to write down my bio a little bit because it is quite varied and unusual. So as you mentioned right now, I'm the managing director at Chunky Duck. We're a funky full service agency, really helping businesses as they scale their marketing activity. In the past, how I kind of got started out of high school, I got offered a scholarship to play baseball in the United States. And so I played baseball there for 5 years. I got my bachelor's degree and master's degree while playing there. I came back to Australia. I started working at a bunch of performance agencies, really in the PPC, SEO and client service world. I had a really impressive quarter life crisis around 26 years old. I sold all my belongings. I met a girl, bought a bicycle and rode 12,000 kilometers across South America. Came back and was a free spirit, decided to become a dive instructor. I worked at Sydney Aquarium for 3 or 4 years as one of the divers in the tanks there. So hand feeding sharks and rays and working in penguin enclosures, and really quite a fun career. COVID happened and we didn't get any more punters through the aquarium. So you don't need to keep the exhibits quite as clean when no one's walking through. So I got let go. And I was very thankful at that time that I'd maintained freelancing work pretty much throughout. As lovely as it is working at the aquarium, it's difficult to survive in Sydney on minimum wage. So I had to maintain a bit of a side hustle to keep that going. COVID kicked off and that really became my main hustle. I kind of went into freelancing and back into agency world again. And yeah, started Chunky Duck 3.5 years ago. Myself and 2 other freelancers came together and kind of started from there. And yeah, the rest is kind of history.
Amazing. I'm sure everyone's going, wow, that's a really interesting, background. And I remember when I spoke to you, I think before Christmas time, and you talked a lot about Sydney Aquarium and just how much you really loved and enjoyed the culture there and working there. So I can appreciate that, it was hard to leave there in COVID and the shutdown of that. And I think lots of people in different industries found that. But it sounds like you found your space and your place. And I originally came to Chunky Duck through one of your creative director, I believe, Luke, and have met you through him. So tell us a bit about what's your philosophy behind Chunky Duck?
Yeah, Chunky Duck is a really, it's come a long way in the last few years. When we started, there was 3 freelancers. We all worked in our own specialties of technology and development, design and creative, and myself in the PPC side. And we kind of got started. The reason we created a company was just to save money. We were all paying for our own accountants and our own software and our own tech. And we thought, hey, we just put this all into one and we could make a whole bunch of extra money. And that was the really naive beginning of it. Within 2 years, we had 12 staff and things kind of got a little bit chaotic. And when I originally stepped into the business, I did not want to be in charge. I was very adamant when I started the business. I was like, I don't want to lead it. I don't want to be in charge. I just want to have one or two people in my team that I have a direct relationship with that I can just ping off each day and really not have any other responsibility outside of that. That lasted all of about 16 months. And really what happened is it was obvious that we needed someone to kind of steer the ship. And my hand kind of got put up because, well, I just had more experience in other agencies and seeing how those businesses operate. And so I was really just mimicking what I had experienced at other organizations prior to starting business.
Yeah. And so tell us a bit about that transition, because I think lots of people who tune in here and listen here are from all sorts of varied backgrounds and varied businesses. And I know, for example, there are people on here now that are in the motor car industry. There are also people who are in not-for-profit. I've got a couple of government people, as well as electrical engineers. So there's all sorts of people in all sorts of industries who are leading other humans and teams in lots of different ways. What was your transition? I know you sort of said I modeled what I'd seen in other agencies I'd worked with, but how did you start to learn leadership? And did you have any, I guess, big lessons along the way of learning to manage people and not just be, you know, a creator yourself?
Yeah, I was very lucky. I did have a lot of previous experience in leadership positions. Some had worked and some had failed. So very early on, I mentioned that I went to the US in college. Prior to that, I played in the Australian under-19s baseball team and was selected as one of the captains for that team. And so that was really my first kind of step into that space, was getting an opportunity to lead a team. However, you've still got a coach and you've still got some additional support there. I got into agency land. It was my very first career, and I started as a lowly account executive, and within 3 years found myself as the client service director in charge of a team of 8 within an agency of 35, 40 people. And I crumbled. I was just horrendous at it. I was so focused on myself and what I needed to do each day, and really had not yet appreciated or understood the power of working through others. And so part of the reason that I said to my new business partners that I didn't want to be in charge is I was pretty well aware of where my flaws were. I'd been in those positions in the past. The first time it had burnt me out. When I talk about burnout and that quarter life crisis, it was coming out of that agency that I overworked myself. I was doing 70, 80 hours a day, which is a week. A week.
If you could create time like that, I'd love to know.
there's some sort of this really ugly culture that exists in agency land where I would leave at 5:30, 6 p.m. So after the day of work, and I was getting called a part-timer simply because everyone else stayed till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so there's this really ugly culture in agencies that working more is what gets you ahead. And the reason that I really decided to make that leap of faith into my own business, other than COVID kind of provoking that, was I was becoming a dad, and my wife Amber was pregnant, and I wanted to make a change where I could be at home all the time and be more present. And part of that's what really kind of forced me to become a better leader. It wasn't, I could no longer simply just muscle my way through a tough period where I could work 10, 12 plus hours a day. At 4:30 p.m. this afternoon, you'll hear on this little door just out here, continuous knocking with Daddy until I open the door, and then it's over and my workday is done. And so I very much have to be on top of what I'm doing. But I also, that was a big motivation for me, was becoming a dad and forcing myself to work through others. And if I'm really being honest, it's probably in the last 12 months I've come to appreciate what my role is as managing director. I've effectively been playing the role for 2 years, but I didn't change my title because I didn't feel as though I deserved to wear it. And it's only really of late that I've gone, yeah, I think I know what I'm meant to do here. And I think I finally understand what my role is. But that's been a long and difficult journey. We're a fully remote business, and leadership is so different to what I learned when I studied in the States. It's a different approach. It's far more trust is required. It's very different, very different. So I've had to really learn on the fly while maintaining a profitable business at the same time. So it's been, yeah, a lot of change, a lot of change.
Yeah, there's so much there that I want to dive into. And I think, I'm interested if anyone else has experienced that work-life balance being out of whack. And there's nothing better, right, than small children to bring that back into alignment. But also we go, does it have to wait till that? Can we as adults do that for ourselves? And so many people I coach and work with say they've had little signs throughout, but it wasn't until some major health crisis or a relationship breakdown that they realize I've completely, given my whole life over to work. And I know I've worked with lots of agencies myself as a client over many years. I was in marketing and branding as well. And I saw that work ethic where they'd have a pitch due. And so everyone would be working late. And it felt frenetic whenever I went into their workplace. And it's one of the things that started me realizing that workplaces have a vibe. And what's accepted and the norm, regardless of what our values say, sometimes it's more what's the unspoken ground rules here. We might say we believe in trust and work-life balance, but then you see that everyone's there late at night. And I had an experience of that myself where I saw people ordering pizza at night, and I was like, why are people ordering pizza? And they were like, because it's late and we're hungry. And it's when I realized I'm being a bad manager and leader, because I was still there and it encouraged them to stay. And when I started going home, so did they. So I love all of those lessons. And I'm hearing other people saying, yeah, they've experienced that being out of whack. And hopefully you can all hear Ryan's real humbleness, which is one of the reasons I love chatting to him about culture and teams. And that it took you a while to take that title on board and really own it. But given you are a completely remote workplace and, you're all doing everything via Zooms or Teams and all the chat channels and those sorts of things, how do you find now your leadership's changed? And do you have any ideas, and have you tried some experiments and things and found, what works for you and your team in order to build that trust and communication really well? I'd be curious for you to share.
Yeah, we've tried a lot of things, if I'm being frank. A lot of different things have been trialed. I'm very thankful that above everything else, we have a really adaptable team. And so that's almost a positive, but also a downfall. If it's not a great idea, they can largely still make it work because they are such incredible people. For me, and the biggest challenges that we have are communication, trust, and collaboration. Communication is a great example. We can't just have that quick all hands where I can call all of the team members into a quick 5-minute kind of catch up. And yes, there's technology that does that. And yes, we can just simply have a video call, but there's just something missed where you can't just have a quick broadcast announcement across an office. The other major part is really that learning to trust your team and to stop watching the clock. Now, in agency land and in our business model, hours are really critical because we're interested in how much, the more that you work, the more that we can bill our clients. And so we still need you to track time, but we're far more focused on outcomes than I've largely ever been in my career. It's not about being at your desk for the 7.5 hours. It's about, were you able to achieve the outcomes that we set for you, and we kind of work from that. We have complete flexible location as long as you're kind of within our time zone. We have flexible working hours as long as you're available for meetings with clients during the day. And so we give our team that complete flexibility and trust there. The final part is really the kind of collaboration side of things. When we first started the business, we operated as 3 siloed teams. So there was the 3 directors, we had 1 or 2 direct reports each, and we kind of just did our own work in that field. What kind of happened is we started to scale an agency in our businesses. We didn't really appreciate how much administrative and inefficiency that would add into the business as we kind of grew it. And that was something that meant that very quickly we had to raise our rates. I'm talking over 3 or 4 years, we've effectively doubled the rates of what we charge clients. And that's simply because the way that we operated a business, we want to be able to have that internal time. And when you're a freelancer, 90% of your time is largely spent on clients. You don't need the admin. Invoices take a few minutes at the end of the month. And now all of a sudden we're having internal catch-ups about how we link all three services together and provide a far more valuable service. And that is still something that's underway. I think it's something that will just simply take time. And it's something that we talk about running a remote business or remote agency. It's a little bit like steering a large ship or a cruise ship, because it just takes longer to make change happen. But at the same point, that works in your favor, where if you have someone new come into the business and they're not quite right, they don't quite fit the culture, it's very difficult for them to drag down other people, because there is that just general inertia throughout the business of a positive culture. And so it is very different. It is very, very different. But there's a lot of things that we try to do to prevent that culture getting out of whack. And one is we don't allow overtime. So if you work overtime on any day, we simply ask the next day or the next week you take a reciprocal amount of time off. So if you spend an extra hour finishing something for a client on a Thursday, finish early on Friday. And that's worked really well for us. And agencies are known for quite significant turnover, and we've had no employees leave over 18 months now. So that's been hugely useful for us, and it's difficult to quite calculate the cost of that to a business, but not having to go through another recruitment training cycle is greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, because that can be so costly, and then the time it takes for people to get up to speed and all of those sorts of things. I think you raise lots of issues here that might be relevant to some businesses, not so much to others. And certainly, I think the meeting thing and actually thinking about that being billable hours and how does that work in an agency or a consultancy is very different to, say, some of our government people who are on here who, no offense, but government just have meetings because they're getting a salary anyway. And it's about being efficient, that just because my calendar allows me to book an hour, I may not need an hour. So can we have shorter meetings? Can we look at having them more focused and use other ways so that we're not wasting time? And I think people often forget to add up what's the cost of all the salaries in this room even, and think about that we're wasting money in some ways if we're taking too long to have those sorts of things. I think the overtime one's really curious. And I actually was talking to someone this week who works a 4-day week, and every one of their team do, and they get to choose their day off. He was saying he's one of the lucky ones because he gets Fridays off. But they actually work some compressed hours. So he works a 9.5-hour day and that sort of thing, and then gets a day off a week. And he was saying how much that added to his life work balance and also to his family time, and that he could go to a medical appointment and was able to go to kids' school things and all of those sorts of things. And that one benefit or a different way of working, he was saying, is the one reason he stays with that employer, that he loves his team, but he said more than anything, that little bit of flexibility and having literally a 3-day weekend, he said it's been a complete game changer to his mental health and well-being and his connection with family. So I can see why the overtime thing would be super valuable.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's the other major part that a lot of our team takes up is they often work less than 5 days a week. And so we have some people work 3 days, some people work 4 days a week, but many of them do it across the 5. And so what that means is they might start at 9:30 in the morning and then finish at 4. So that means they can do the drop off for the kids, they can pick them up and go into that, not miss out on the fringes and the fun bits of life. And I'm very appreciative that if I was doing the same role in an agency in Sydney where I used to live, I would probably see my children maybe an hour in total during the week. And right now I get 3 hours per day, 1 hour in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon with my kids that I would otherwise miss. And so to me, that's just, I can't put a price on that. And I love being a dad. I don't think I realized it. I probably waited a little bit too long, but it's the greatest joy I have in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. You can certainly hear that as you talk about it. So I guess for anyone out there, you have a bit of the luxury of being the managing director, which allows you to also set some of this as policy, I guess, for the organization. What would you say, though, for leaders who are working within other bigger, larger organizations, and maybe they just manage a team of 3 or 4, you know, or 5 or something, but they're within a bigger, larger organizations. Do you feel like there are some of the things that you've trialed that could work in those kind of situations as well?
It certainly is. One thing that I've really come to appreciate is making time for connections that aren't just work related. It's something that I'm really big about, is this, that it's just work. And it doesn't matter how much you do today, there will be more tomorrow. It doesn't matter if you complete your to-do list this week, next week it will be full again. It never stops. And so it's about making sure that amongst that, you have a chance to be a little bit more human and have a little bit more interaction. And I actually love the work from home. You get to see an insight to people that you wouldn't otherwise. You know, they might have their kids walk in on a video call, or their cat walk across the keyboard, or you just get to see their background. And there's some part about that I find really wonderful, in that you get a chance to see something that, you know, when you're at work and you're dressed up in a professional role, there's this kind of filter that you put over your life that you simply cannot hide as easily at home. And so for us, we make a lot of opportunities for connections. And so we have team catch-ups throughout the week. We have once a month on a Tuesday night, we have games night. So everyone joins and we play a bunch of games together online for anyone that wants to join in. And that's really critical for a lot of our team is remote. We have people in Southwest Rocks, people in Maruya, Terrigal, all around Australia, and not in major cities, that finding that community and place and friends to hang out is a great place. So we do things like that. We have happy hour on a Thursday afternoon for an hour where everyone comes and we just pick some random things to talk about. Each day we have what's called open office hours. So it's just a 2-hour window where it's a Slack huddle. Anyone can simply join, and you don't have to say anything. You can join and just listen to the conversation, a bit like you're in an office and people are talking around you while you work, or you can join in and ask questions. And it's a little bit of a kind of water cooler style moment. We do weekly kudos. So every Wednesday we give everyone all their thanks throughout the team. And so we do really try to create as many opportunities for human connections outside of work. And then once a year, and I'm not sure if this is possible within a team, but we have our annual migration. So ducks migrate. And so each year we bring all of the ducks to Noosa, where I live. And we have a week of workshops and just really making time for the important things that often get lost in the day-to-day. And so if I can kind of summarize as best as possible, it's just making opportunities for better connections that aren't specifically work related. And yeah.
I love that. And of course, a creative agency would have their ducks migrating. That's brilliant. Love everything that you shared. I think I love the weekly kudos. I have heard of organizations having all sorts of staff-led awards, but, you know, like the casualness even of that, where it feels more informal. And love the idea of open office hours, although I'm sure there are some introverts that are like, I could think of nothing worse than having that background noise. But I also have some introverts that I work with, and they'll just go to a cafe to work purely because they find they're not as productive when they're at home alone and it's quiet. And I think some of those could even work in workspaces where people are shared, you know, where you might have quiet rooms, or where you might have some designated times where we actually get together and share. And one such tip that I'll give to everyone that I've heard and seen work well in an organization is to follow a bit of the Pomodoro method, which is work for 40 minutes each hour, and then 20 minutes of kind of downtime or checking emails and those sorts of things. And I've seen that work in offices where the start of every hour they do their own quiet focused work, and then the 20 minutes at the end of each hour they go and interrupt each other, they go and ask the questions that they need, and so they still get that kind of social space, but they get stuff done, which is so important as well, right? Curious, just in final wrap up, do you still get enough time to do actual on the tools yourself, or do you find that most of your work now is actually just managing the team? Because I think that's one big thing as people move from manager to leader, is that they often say, you know, what I started in a career as, I don't get to do that so much anymore. What's that mix like for you now?
Yeah, it's certainly changed, and it changed very quickly when I took on the managing director responsibilities. It's easy for us to know because we track what's called billable utilization in an agency, which is the percentage of your hours that are billed to clients. And so when I first started Freelancer, it was 95% of my time. Everything was working straight on clients. There was no other admin because I would get the emails and reply, and that was pretty much it. Today, it sits around 10%. It can fluctuate. It can go up to 20-25% if we have some major workshops or I'm traveling to, say, Melbourne or Sydney for client meetings. And so it does fluctuate a little bit, but it's largely, 10% or below most months. And if I'm being honest, I'm actually pretty happy with that. I've worked in my real specialty. I've worked in Google Ads and SEO for years easily. And I don't want to say I've conquered it at all, but a lot of the challenges that we would often get from clients are ones that I've seen that before. I have a methodology for that circumstance and I can apply that. And the critical thinking and the problem solving was becoming less and less. And so by going into this new role, it very much re-kickstarted my brain. And this is a new problem set and it can't be solved in the same way. And I started ingesting a whole bunch of different materials and information. But I'm glad for that now. I think when I step back into the tools, it doesn't have the same joy that it used to. And I really find now that management and leadership, and honestly, the reason I'm here today is to talk about a passion that I have, which is healthy leadership, and not just within yourself and your organization, but just in general, and what impact that can have across other people's lives.
Totally. And I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons in my life has been that work-life balance and experiencing burnout, adrenal fatigue, those sorts of things myself from trying to do it all.
Adrenal fatigue.
I had to learn alternative ways. Yeah, absolutely. So would love to finish up. I know that leadership is hugely a passionate thing for you. Do you want to just share, where have you otherwise learnt leadership? Obviously from people you've worked with and things that you've tried, but for anyone here that's going, I want to learn more, have you got any book recommendations, podcasts, or anything at all where you've also gleaned leadership advice from?
Yeah, I certainly do. Look, a lot of the resources that I follow are agency-based, and so they're not quite as useful. One book that I've read probably about a year ago now that has really changed my perspective is called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It is an alternative approach to hiring, and if I could go back 2 years, I think I may have grown Chunky Duck in a different way. And what it really talks about is that we start our own business, we get a whole bunch of work coming in and we go, oh, I need someone to do this. And I go and hire someone to fulfill that role. And then I get more work over here and I hire someone, and 6-12 months later, you realize that you've just become the administrative assistant of the business and you don't actually do the work. And those new people that you've brought in aren't quite as good as it as you were. And so now you're dealing with client issues because performance is lacking. And this really talks about an alternative approach of go and hire someone to do the stuff you're not good at, and hire them to do the low value administrative tasks of booking in meetings and replying to basic emails and responding to media requests and things like that, that just mean that you can spend more time focusing on what you're great at. And so that was a really critical one. One that I read 4 or 5 years ago, which completely changed my own perspective, is one called Quiet by Susan McCain. And I am introverted, but I've always been quite good speaking or in circumstances like this. But after this call, I'll take a 30-minute break because it will exhaust me. And so what this book really taught me about is we often look at it introverts or extroverts, and it's not quite that simple. It talks about reactivity of being in those situations. So you can have a highly reactive introvert, which is someone that really shies away into the corner and is ultra stressed in those situations, or a low reactive introvert, which is who I consider myself to be. And that is, I can be okay in that situation, but wearing that hat of being out and socializing exhausts me. And when I kind of started to realize, hey, that's why these meeting days where I have 6 or 7 meetings across a day and I get to 4 p.m. and I'm exhausted and I have no energy to be dad, the reason for that is I've had my extrovert cap on most of the day. And so trying to better manage my energy levels, and that played a really critical part in understanding why I had burnt out potentially in my career before was I just stacked my week with meetings, and by the end of it, I was a mess. And so understanding that a little bit more, forcing myself to not be in meetings and to have someone else represent us and work through them was a really critical part, and one of the best resources that I've ever come across.
Fantastic. I hope that's great tips for everyone listening, whether you're introverted or extroverted, but also think about your teams and your staff. Maybe you've got people sometimes in meetings that are a bit quieter and you think, oh, they're not contributing. And it could just be that it's to do with how they gain and receive their energy. And they might have been in lots of meetings that day and they've already flatlined on that. I know this week I facilitated 3 days in a row, and was talking to my partner in the car driving home one night, and he said, was everything all right today? And I said, it was amazing. It was so good. And he said, you sound flat. And I said, I am just knackered, right? It's taken energy out of me. That's all. And so I love, yes. And Sonia in the chat box is saying, great that you found what works for you. Well done. And I think that's one of our jobs as leaders, in order to create psychologically safe workplaces and workplaces where there is trust and flow, is allowing people to work to their work style. And yeah, there's going to be times they're going to have to do other things, but understanding maybe they need some downtime or go to their desk and do quiet stuff for a while, or, you know, just not pushing people too far out of their comfort zone and not allowing any of that recovery time. We can learn lots from having more balance. And I love that book, Quiet, as well. It's really insightful. And I think it's something for extroverts to read as well, to really understand their partner or people working with them. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. And we very much want people to go and check out Chunky Duck if they're looking for creatives to do creative things. Where can they find you and your amazing work?
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It really has. It's the easiest way to get us is just chunkyduck.com. If you typo a lot, as I tend to do, there's a lot of different typos that will take you to chunkyduck.com. I won't mention them because they're a little bit crass, but the other way is just by LinkedIn. So just on LinkedIn is an easy way for me, but either one, you'll find me.
Fantastic. So thank you. Go and check out Chunky Duck, and they have a very groovy website as well. It's very cute. So go and check it out. Thank you again, Ryan, for all of your insights today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.